Welcome to another episode of William Steele True Crime and Steele Spotlight TV and Radio, as well as I'm here with my guest host, my co-host, Ignacio Esteban, retired ATF agent. So he brings a wealth of information behind the scenes, law enforcement, and all kinds of interesting topics. But today we're going to speak about a personal matter to him that shows you what he was doing before he got into law enforcement. To give you a little insight into this man's heart and memories and brain and his experiences in Alaska. So welcome to the show, Ignacio.
Bill, what's going on, man? Always good to be here co-hosting, talking about our experiences and a wealth of knowledge that we have to share with your audience. Always good stuff. Always good stuff. Yeah, that's an interesting little book. I just published it. And again, all my books, so you can see the poster behind me, they're on Amazon, and they're free for Kindle Unlimited subscribers. They're good short reads, and I put some medium up together, and of course, I got the one on Audible here with ATF Undercover. This one's called Alaska, the Land of the Midnight Sun. And for those, I never had experiences before. I'm from Florida, right? I grew up in Florida, born in Los Angeles, and I never had a chance to really experience the wildness of Alaska. I never saw Northern Lights. I never seen all these things I will experience in this great adventure of mine of Alaska. So I'm gonna give you when this happened. Summer '93. I had just graduated from college at St. Leo University. That's just north of Tampa, Catholic University out there. And my buddy and I, we were talking about doing some, camping, doing an adventure, all right, going somewhere exploring. And I came across some books and magazines about camping and working. Originally, we wanted to work at one of these crab vessels, right? You remember the Dangerous Catch, where you make a percentage of the catch? This is before the show came out and everything else.
I think it was like the deadliest catch or something like that.
Yeah, the deadliest catch, and it is really, really dangerous work, really. And I would talk to guys who did it, and I would just keep on working the cannery for good measure after that, because people lose their fingers. They get hurt badly. I mean, those crab pods are weigh over hundreds of pounds. And when they come in hard with the storm and everything else, people get hurt fast. And then I picked up quickly. I said, you know what? I have a nice future ahead of me. I don't need to be risking that. We want to have some fun, but I do want to keep all my fingers. I kind of like having all that. And a lot of guys lose a lot of things. So this is the world I'm about to go into. The world I lived was in Florida, in Tampa. That's where I was at the time. And the world that him and I go into it's called the last frontier for a reason. That's what it's called, because that's what it is. It's a frontier state, and it still has that whole feel. It's like you were 100 years ago. I don't know how else to describe it. If you've never been to Alaska, it is truly, truly. It hasn't changed much since I was there. What I hear talking to other people, Laura, a friend of ours, who give her a shout out. She also did some editing and reviewed it and liked it. I did a show with her, and I know you've done a few shows with her. Can't remember what's the name of her company, but something
Starseed.
Starseed, right? Shout out to her. So I appreciate her review on that. So my buddy and my mom at the time works in the airline industry, and South Florida. So we were able to get discounted tickets, right? Travel standby, and you don't have to pay much. You just go. So we went from Tampa to Seattle, and then Seattle to Anchorage.
Right.
And then Anchorage, we stayed at a youth hostel. We cursed a very cheap youth hostel. It was pretty much. Have you stayed in a youth hostel, Bill?
No.
It's pretty much you pay almost nothing, but it's like bunk beds in open rooms. So there's a lot of people, and you have an open, bath community shower you can use, bathroom you can use type deal, which is good because we're there to spend the night. And then I had done my homework and I had called a lot. And remember, this is before the internet. This is before you had to do things the old school way, right? You had to call, right? You had to figure things out. I didn't have my phone on me to do everything I wanted to do. You got to use this, right? And you got to think ahead a lot. So this is the different world I'm looking at in Alaska. So I had called, and a lot of them were hiring college students from Nikiski. Those who don't know Alaska, you have Anchorage up here, and then you have Nikiski down here in the Kenai Peninsula. Gorgeous, gorgeous area, the Kenai Peninsula. You have a chance to ever check that out. So we spent the night over at Anchorage, and then we took a shuttle down to Nikiski. And then we met with the manager there, and he said, yeah, not a problem. And we all had our camping gear. So we had to go, before the trip, we got all our camping gear. We have a Army pop-up tent, right? We had one of those. And we're going to be camping. And so they had all these kids out. So you had This is the kind of people I met out there. We had the camping ground and everything else. We're going to work at the county, and it would be the hardest work of my life. Hardest work of my life. And that's the respect I give these people and how they live in. I was just there for like, a month or a little over a month or so doing that kind of work. People do this season after season, work out there, work. It's a thankless, dirty job,
Right.
but has to be done because of fish. And the county we worked at was half owned by Japanese, because the Japanese love our salmon. And the kind of salmon they had there was the pink salmon and what they call the red salmon, or this sockeye salmon. No one also has a sockeye salmon out there. Very good, and everything else. So we out there and we're camping. We set up our gear. A lot of college kids, but you also have different kinds of people that are working. You have migrant workers from Latin America all over. And we spoke Spanish, so that was fine dealing with them. But you also have a different element, which we'll run into, which were kind of like outlaws. People that were hiding from the law, right? Which is true. And we will meet
They're either going to Florida, they're going to run to Florida, or they're going to run to Alaska.
Alaska, and you disappear. Trust me. In that area, you disappear. You get a new ID, and you become a different person, and you tell a different story, because a lot of these guys are fugitives. They're wanted by authorities.
Right.
And I would bump into some of this situation here, and I'll tell you some stories. And remember, this is before law enforcement. So I'm still, I just graduated from college, have a degree in political science and history, but I hadn't gone into customs yet. I was still thinking about maybe going to law school. That's where I am at this stage of my life in 93. So we're here in this amazing area. We don't pay anything for camping, which is great because we're working at the cannery. So, and they also offer food. We brought some of our own food also. So it's a great situation to make money, and they pay okay. I think if you're working on one of these fishing canneries, they were paying, I think at the time like $15, $16 an hour, which was not bad at the time, which is pretty decent, man. And because we were working like 12-hour shifts, so we were working the midnight shift, and that's when I started appreciating the land, the midnight sun. So it's like midnight, and it feels like 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Wow.
The sun is that bright. I don't know, have you experienced that, Bill, before or no?
No, I've never been to Alaska.
No.
I've heard about it, though.
Yeah, insomnia. People get a lot of insomnia in Alaska, not adjusting to it. What was else? I think that's a movie with Al Pacino and Robin Williams, where Al Pacino is an LAPD detective who goes to try to solve the homicide up there in Alaska, and he's suffering from insomnia, and he can't sleep because it's like light all throughout. You can't. At first, you have a hard
better
time.
You better take your bedroom and really black it out really well, and to keep to a schedule to get in there.
Yeah, you have to. It's hard. But because I was so exhausted from a lot of the hours in there in the cannery, I'm telling you, you just zonk out. I don't care if it's bright. I'm just exhausted because of the long hours. And you are in freezing conditions in there. They give you some gloves, they give you some protection gear, and you have these monster trucks coming in from the port, all the fish they caught, and they're dumping it. And then they have these two lines. And the first job I was getting was you're a spooner. You have to pretty much clear out the guts inside of the fish, and you push it out all there. It is really, and you're covered in fish slime. It splatters all over you. It is unbelievably hard work. And then you're stacking and everything. And you do it for 12 hours. Not easy, but it makes you appreciate. It made me appreciate how hard these people have to work and the conditions they live in.
What becomes of all the guts? Do they use them for fertilizer somewhere, or ship them out somewhere?
I don't know. We just pushed them all the way done, and they got pushed around. So I don't know what happened to them. Maybe they get filled in another can.
They use it for chum out in the ocean to catch.
Maybe that could be. Why not? They'll come out there. But amazing the amount of fish, and the Japanese, of course, love their fish too. Obviously, with sushi and everything else, right. and in the U.S. here, so that's why the Japanese were involved there. They definitely love our fish. So work a lot of hours. You go back and forth, which is interesting enough. But like I said, talking to some of these characters, then we met one guy. Some of the people there are nice. Like I said, a lot of migrant workers. One of these guys, he came across nice, but we knew there was something wrong with him. We knew that his stories that were made. And this is us in our early 20s. And I'm in my early 20s. He was at least, I'll say, mid to late 30s, right? And he's hanging out with us, right? We're all college kids, right? And we're thinking, okay, he's trying to get a new life. Something's not right. It doesn't make sense, right? You can figure stuff out, all right? If something was wrong with this guy. And when he starts drinking, and everybody was smoking a lot of weed. I mean, Alaska, you said some of the best weed in the country, and these guys were always smoking weed. Not my thing, but you can get the contact high because there's so much smoke around you. It's amazing. But a lot of these guys love their weed. They smoke a lot of it. This guy was big, but he smoked a lot of pot. But when he smokes a lot of pot or drank a lot, he became a different person.
Right.
very person, very nasty. And he said, man, this guy's kind of nasty and stuff. And one time, you know, like this, all college students from all over the country. We were, I think, the farthest from Florida. Met some guys from the Midwest and some guys from like the Washington State area. And we're all hanging, telling our stories, what we want to do, and et cetera, right? And one day this guy comes out and he has a revolver. He has like a stainless steel revolver, 38, and he says, "Man, I want to shoot." You know, he can tell he's fucked up, and he wants to start shooting the gun. And I said, "Bro, you're gonna shoot that thing, shoot it in the trees somewhere or whatever." But he doesn't even look if anybody's back there. He just starts pointing and popping rounds. I'm like, "Oh my god, what's wrong with this guy? That's not, you know, out there." And I said, "Okay, that's fine or whatever." Hopefully he goes sleep it off and whatever. I said, well, right back in my head, said, "Hey, we got to keep an eye on this guy. He's a little dangerous." The next day, you could tell he started in a bad mood or something happened, and he had smoked a lot again, or he'd been drinking a lot. And he comes in, and this time there's a bigger group of us, and we also have some attractive females there too. And he sits right next to the attractive female, and you could tell he's all messed up. But this time he points a gun at her and pushes up against her rib cage.
Oh my god.
And she starts crying and gets upset. And I said, "Hey man, calm down, calm down. What's going on?" And all of a sudden he points it at me. He points a gun at me. I was like, "Bro, what's going on?" Everybody starts calming him down. She's like, "Hey man, there's no place for this going on." And I was like, "Man, these camps, you never know what could happen. This guy is out there." So eventually he calmed down and he put the gun away, the revolver, and he went back to wherever his camp was. Well, some people there got upset and they called of course, management, what was going on. And I never saw that guy again. So I assume authorities came around. I bet he was a felon, right? They found the gun, and off he went to whatever warrant he had and disappeared. So
I think
that was
the last thing a fugitive needs to do is be getting drunk and getting high on weed, where they're telling strangers their version of their life story and making a bunch of errors.
and then popping rounds and putting guns and pointing guns at college students. That's the quickest way to go back to, you know where, go back to the can.
I was a fugitive a couple of times. You know how I would dress? Pretty much like this. I wouldn't even wear a lot of jewelry. I just very low key. I blended right in.
Yeah, this guy, you can tell he's had a lifetime making bad decisions, and some guys can never get it straight. They just make always bad. And he was just one guy that made bad decisions. And unfortunately, I mean, there's also sometimes families over there working at these canneries, camping out. And it was a young family. I think the girl was maybe 15, 16 years old. And you know, the problem is you hang out with certain kind of people, things happen. And as a father, you should always keep an eye on your daughters, right? But I guess she was out smoking or drinking, whatever, and they had separated. And allegedly, she came back that she said she was gang raped by a bunch of migrant workers, allegedly. So they had called. These are things I'm seeing at this camp. I'm like, man, this is getting crazy here. You know, people are fighting. Sometimes they're arguing. You know, this camp work, but the college students make it a little different. But I feel bad for the people that have to live in that environment, come back and forth, because it's really nasty. And sometimes they can't afford to stay anywhere other than camping. And people come in and they steal their stuff. They weren't respectful. So that was part of that little adventure there.
Did the girl that happened to prosecute? Did these people get arrested? How did that end?
I just saw the authorities there, and they said the story, and he said, she said, obviously, you know how that works.
Oh my God.
You know, so it's pretty much the family took
around a little longer. I guess
nowadays
there's no consent. If a woman is drunk like that, there's really not, I don't think there's a such thing as a consent.
Yeah, 30 point. Years ago, I don't know. Maybe she wasn't that drunk. I don't know. Maybe they were drunk too. You know, it's one of those things where you're like, yikes.
Yeah, I think one of the parameters some people use is, well, having regret later is not the same thing as you didn't give consent at the time.
That's true. That is true. Yeah, buyer's remorse, right?
Yeah, that's terrible. I remember, you know, when I was came out when I was in jail in Fort Lauderdale or Palm Beach or something, people were slipping a lot of roofenol in the nightclubs and stuff down there.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, it was like so prevalent, and so many people were, you know, getting their lives destroyed. The women and then the guys are going to prison forever.
Date rape, yeah. So I saw that situation there, and some of the other guys say, "Hey, listen, there's a little bit of break because the work was consistent for a while, but sometimes there wasn't enough catch for the camera to work, so we had some downtime." And he said, "My buddy was going to stay behind," and he said, "Hey, I got some other friends there." I said, "Hey, let's go to this cool bluegrass festival up in Talkeetna, which is not too far from Denali, right. Which is Mount McKinley. Now it's just called Denali." And I said, "Yeah, let's go out there." So I felt like when we went out there, people were just pretty much bought our camping bags, right, sleeping bags, and it was just unbelievable, gorgeous weather. I think at night it was like in the 50s, in the day like in the 70s, maybe up to 80. Beautiful
Perfect.
weather,
Yeah,
great
perfect.
concert. They have bluegrass music,
No.
and people, of course, smoking a lot of weed, a lot of pot. Everybody's smoking a lot, drinking a lot, and I noticed, and again, I didn't know much about the biker culture at the time, very little. I'll know more later that the Hells Angels were doing security at this festival. So I'm saying, wow, the Hells Angels are here, and they have here a fundraiser for Toys for Tots. I'm like, look at that, the Hells Angels doing Toys for Tots,
Is that like
man.
asking the foxes to guard the hen house, right?
Yeah, exactly. And they've had a history of problems, and they had their camps and everything else. And we're drinking, and there's a little local bar, and we bump into, as a group of us, we bump into some of the guys out there with the Hells Angels, and I start talking to them, and I don't know much about them, so we say, hey man, I see that you guys doing some good work here with Toys for Tots and that's everything else, and I still remember to this day, 30 years later, the guy looks at me and tells me, man, because he knew we were college students, or he could tell where I said, man, you want nothing to do with these guys. He looked at me just like that, Bill. Said, "You want nothing to do with these guys." He's an Hell's Angel. He said, "This whole thing with Toys for Tots is a bunch of bullshit, and it's a facade. It's all a bunch of nonsense. In other words, they're fucking no good." So I was like, "Okay, I'll remember that." So we had a few more beers. We finished up, and we went our separate ways, and that was like my experience there with the Hell's Angels. Like, okay, interesting, but they were everywhere. They were very prevalent. They're working in that festival. That's something they do. It makes them money, and I knew nothing about it. Little I know later that I will investigate and do cases on one percenters and write about it. We've had shows about it and all that. But that was my
Where's
little
the biggest of that group? Where's the biggest club, I guess, in the United States? Where's the biggest
chapter.
presidents? Yeah, presence of them.
I would say start in California. So California,
Yeah, yeah.
I would say California. It's our biggest. Um,
And
and
again, I always, put this out there. If somebody's, turned their life around or got out of that lifestyle and doing positive things, you're more than welcome to share your story, inspirational stories on this channel. We're telling you stories for, crime prevention reasons, but also for inspirational stories. We need people who turn their life around to come and tell their stories of how they did it, why they did it, and then reach out to others that are possibly heading down that path.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That's part of why we do this. I co-host with you. We talk about things to improve people's lives, what they can do, and how they can change it, and tell pretty cool stories that people I think can enjoy. Which I think this is part of. So that's what I did. So we wrapped up the Bluegrass Festival. We went took a tour of Denali, which is the highest mountain range in North America. It used to be called Mount McKinley, and they changed it to Denali. That's the original name, the big one. And we enjoyed the area there. We came back. And then I talked to my mom. I told them the adventures and everything else. I said, listen, we said, we're going to Scotland in about a week. If you want to join us, and because I've been out there for over a month already or so, did some good adventures. I'm getting tired of the camp. I'm not liking what I'm seeing already. Right? Yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there. I said, I've been here for a month and I've seen what's going on out here. I've made some good money. Work was tough. I respect it. Talk to people. I respect how they live and not easy for them. And I said, yeah. I told my buddy, he said, no, I'll take another week. So he dropped me off at the airport with another friend of mine, and then I went from Anchorage to Glasgow, Edinburgh with my family and my sister and I, and spent about a week and a half out there in Scotland, and enjoyed a good time there. So that was and I have more details in the book there, but that was the adventures of the summer '93. A lot of appreciation and talk to people, especially I talk about the dangerous catch. Talk to people who work in the canneries and working out there and say, hey, I was thinking about working some of these crab vessels, man. And they start showing me missing fingers, injuries, what's happened. They said, dude, that work is brutal. And people die all the time because
I saw
sometimes
a couple of episodes of that show. The waves are like, what are they, like 20, 30-foot tall waves in the middle of nowhere in the dark of night.
Yes.
Like you said, you're getting banged around. People are going overboard. You can't find them again after they go
that's
overboard.
it. They die. It's really dangerous work. So I kind of, once I saw that, you get lured in, you know why? The percentage. You get a percentage of the catch. And it can be very lucrative. You go out there. But again, it could cost you everything. So cannery work's still dangerous.
Have you ever seen a lot of bears out there? Or how about the streams where you always see on these nature
Salmon.
shows where they're going upstream to lay their eggs, but the bears are just scooping them out of the water? Have you ever seen that?
No, I've seen it on different documentaries for sure,
Right.
but I kind of keep away from the bears. It's definitely hungry season, and I don't want to be on their menu.
There was a guy I saw interviewed on I think he had a show on HBO or something. He thought he was at one with the bears out in Alaska, and he'd go out there a certain time of year and live with them. And then he did, I think, David Letterman show. And David Letterman said, "Okay, you're doing this. You have your TV show. You're successful. Are we going to read about that? They ate you one day. Oh no, this, that, and the other thing. They're my friends." And next thing you know, the plane that comes to get him at the end of the season saw all his gear by the water. It's like a lake plane with the pontoons on it. And the guy said he was circling, and the stuff was all lined up there for him to leave. But the only thing he saw, because he makes sure there's no bears around before he lands,
Oh,
I
heck
guess.
no.
And so he circles the camp once or twice, looking down, maybe waiting for the guy to wave. And the only thing he saw was a rib cage. And so they had footage. He had his cameras running when this happened.
Oh,
A bear attacked and ate him. His wife came out throwing pans at it, and she got attacked and eaten too.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, that's horrible. I saw the podcast show on that one. She's yelling and making horrible noises, and that angers the bear, and he goes after her too.
Yeah,
that bear was hungry, and I heard in the same story that allegedly they had left to get on the plane, I think a week earlier, but something happened, they couldn't leave, so they came back. So, man, just bad timing, and you don't play around with that. But you know what? Yeah, the bears are dangerous, but be careful with the humans.
Oh, of course. Yeah, there's humans that are treacherous. Smile on your face and do anything to you.
And that guy was crazy. I think that guy was off, and he could have shot and killed her. He could have shot me. You never know.
So for our audience, my co-host here, he's written, I think it's over 70-something books, including ATF Undercover. Yeah. As you guys know, I wrote a couple of books. We're going to put the covers of the book here. And please check them out in the description. You know how to find them if you want to purchase them. And this show is going to be going up on Steal Spotlight TV and radio across all my social. And things are growing. I'm picking up a lot of subscribers. And it's touch and go because, like, on this show, you can use a little language. On other shows, they make me edit it out if somebody says it. So I try to keep a very clean show. I think you slipped up one time. I'm going to have to edit that out.
Well, I do a lot of shows, and guys are really explicit with their language.
Oh, I know. Listen, my first book is full of the F word, and I caught hell over it, because I have a Christian fan base also. Okay. And I told my co-author, who's the editor of the National Enquirer, Gary Greenberg, I said, Gary, pick me a title. I was in prison when that book about Robert Durst came out, and he picked Sex and a Serial Killer, My Bizarre Times with Robert Durst. And I'm like, well, yes, but it's kind of written to help victims understand him and law enforcement to better understand him. It's not really a salacious book about sex,
Hey,
and he goes, well, sex sells. And I'm like, I did some research. The best title to put on a book is the word secret. That usually sells books, or something new, or something with the number 11 on it. For some reason, it flies off the shelves. So they done research to see what sells.
That's interesting.
I just went with it because, I let them do it. But I think when my part 2 comes out, which is soon, it's going to be Says the Serial Killer. Instead of because he made a lot of missteps during his trial. He lied his ass off, and I have to probably take that out too. But yeah, he got caught in so many lies and so many stories. He said that Susan Berman wanted him to go out to Los Angeles on a staycation. The prosecutor said, so in 2000, November of 2000, she was telling you this is a woman who was neurotic, who documented everything she ever did, even if she went to the store for 10 minutes. And so there was nothing in her journals that her best friend, who just gave her $50,000 a few weeks before, was going to visit her for a few days on a staycation. Well, I don't know. She forgot to document it, And so they said, so are you certain that's the word she used? I want you to come over for a staycation. So they, of course, researched the word, because it's not a common word,
right,
and found out it didn't come into existence until like 10 years later, So they called him on it on a stand. They said, so when you were on a stand before, you said you wanted, are you aware, here's exactly where that word started in the year, 10 years later, I think it was 10 years later. And he said, well, I guess Susan was ahead of her time.
Amazing. It sounds like a good read, Bill. Sounds like a really good read.
Oh, you got to read it. If you never have, you got to read it. Yeah. I can send you a digital copy if you want.
Now, between you and I, between the stories and the books we've written, we've got a lot of good stuff out there. Good content, folks. First time checking, and check out all their old shows. We have so many out there. Go check it out. Go check it out on the True Crime Channel here. Steal the Spotlight.
And between Ignacio and I, he's had an interesting life. I've had an interesting life. He came out ahead because he stayed within the bounds of the law, whereas I deviated, lost everything. 18 years of my freedom, essentially my family, my relationship with my mother because she passed away thinking I was dead while I was in prison, my inheritance. So I am still, over a year later, getting out of prison, trying to get on my feet. And, then you have people like, we discussed this, haters undermining any little success you have. But
this is a good thing we got right here, Bill. We got a good show going on. We're going strong. The numbers are climbing. You're getting a lot of subscribers. People like it. Books are selling.
There you go.
And then you also have the show successfully on A&E, right? Inmate to Roommate.
Yeah, Inmate to Roommate on A&E. So we put up a show today for Steal the Spotlight, and I'm starting to put trailers in there in the Steal the Spotlight to get people refamiliar with the show. So when season 2 airs, I can't say whether or not I'll be in it officially, but there's a lot of interest in me being in it because I somehow came out on top of the pack on that one. Anyway, Ignacio, thank you for joining again.
All right, man. My co-host.
And we're
Alaska, the land of the midnight sun. And folks, if you have a chance, go check out the great state of Alaska, the largest state in this country. Unbelievable. It's just in the summertime. Of course, winter a little cold, but the summer, unbelievable. And you'll be shocked at the beautiful views. Midnight, and it'll be bright like 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
There you go. And join Ignacio and I, my co-host, every Saturday night at 8 p.m. for a live. Now, that's going to go out live. We're accepting comments, all the feedback you could possibly do. And so we look forward to doing these lives together. It's become a regular thing. And we'll see everybody here. This show is going to go straight out pretty quick. And then Saturday night, 8 o'clock, join Ignacio and myself.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Ignacio.